Hello, everyone. Dr. Victoria Skirbo here. It's time to look at the week ahead in astrology. This is going to be the week from January 8th until January 14th, 14th or 15th. All right. So this is the second week of January. Boy, the first week of January has been quite unusual. In fact, here in the US, we just got the Speaker of the House. It only took 13 votes. Was it 12? Was it 15? And what, 2 days, 3 days? So we're still sort of trying to, come back from that, so to speak. So let's take a look and see what else is going to happen, right? All right, let's get started here. So we're going to start with the astrology of this week, but just to kind of do a brief sort of overview of last week. I won't spend much time on this, but okay, here we go. I can't do two things at once, as many of you know. Okay. So we're going to look at the astrology of this second week of, there we go, the astrology of January. So let's just take a quick look. In the first week, we started the week with a Venus-Pluto conjunction, very powerful on the United States Pluto. Venus is what we value, Pluto is power. And there definitely was power struggles as we started this year based on what people thought was important, right? And there's definitely what certain people think is important, what other people think is important, is somewhat diametrically opposed to each other. And so we had this back and forth. On Monday, we had Mercury sextile Neptune. That's a lovely aspect, bringing energy into from the divine, really, into our own selves. Mercury, of course, is retrograde still. And so when Mercury is retrograde, we tend to look within for answers. And on the second, we had a boost from Neptune. On the same day, Venus moved into Aquarius, right? It had that meeting with Pluto and says, these are my terms, Mr. Pluto, and then moved into Aquarius, the sign of the collective. On Wednesday, the 4th, Venus, newly in Aquarius, made a sextile to Jupiter, newly in Aries, another beautiful aspect. So there's a lot of really good aspects as we started the week. On Thursday, the 5th, we had a waning trine to Uranus of the sun. Whenever Uranus is connected to any of the planets, there's always surprising things that happen. And certainly we've had a lot of surprising things this week. It also is about change and how change comes easily. One of the things that I think we need as we move forward through this year is, and I think we kind of learned this lesson at the midterms as well, as the old paradigms, the old sort of guaranteed outcomes that we used to have are no longer guaranteed, nor should they be, because many of the outcomes that we had, while some were good, some were somewhat of a waste of time, not really moving us forward evolutionarily. We are going to have a back and forth in 2023. I'm not going to blow sunshine, where you can't see, right? There's going to be back and forth, but there's still going to be progress. And that progress we're going to have to hold on to pretty, not tightly, but hold the hope of that progress, because as we get closer, next year, 2024, there'll be more progress. 2025, there'll be more progress, and we'll start moving in a direction, hopefully, that we want to see. We have to be willing to visualize it. We have to be willing to do the work that it's going to take to get to where we want to go. Nobody's allowed to sit on the couch anymore. Well, you can sit on the couch, but you can't stay there. If you want change, you're going to have to be the change, right? On Friday the 6th, we had that full moon in Cancer, right? Now, I'm trying to remember when we started. Let's see, when did we start the whole thing with the Sunday, Monday? was it Monday that we started the whole, it took a week, took about a week to get our speaker, which would normally take, like 2 days or a day or a couple hours. All right. On Saturday, we have the sun make conjunction to Mercury retrograde. This is the seventh, Saturday the 7th, which actually is today for me, because I'm doing this on Saturday for the week ahead's Sunday to Saturday. And this is about looking within, right? Looking within. Anytime we have an inferior conjunction of Mercury with the sun, that means Mercury is at the heart of the sun. Mercury is Cassimi, and it is about looking within for the light, for the light to shine. And the themes of this looking within and the light to shine is our relationship to power, and also our relationship to taking authority in our own lives, becoming responsible. The question that gets answered today is, where do you need to be responsible? It's your life. You're responsible for making it what you can. And while there's always challenges, those are the challenges we sort of come in with and try to deal with, right? We still need to sort of give ourselves the credit that we get through these challenges, and not necessarily feel like the world is against us because of the challenges. On some level, we've chosen the choices that we find ourselves making. And so if you don't like what you see, you need to choose differently, right? Okay. And these were the charts, which I'm just going to run through. This was the full moon in Cancer, with the moon at 17 degrees of Cancer, the unfoldment of multi-level potentials issuing from an original germ, growth. Opposite the sun at 17 degrees of Capricorn, a repressed woman finds psychological release in nudism, release from inhibition. So there's been this huge release of inhibitions, right? On this period. So that's just something I wanted to look at. And let's go to week 2. So we start January 8th, it's Sunday, which incidentally vibrates to a 16-7 vibration. That is the Tower card. And we have Mercury making a waning trine to Uranus. Now, Mercury is still retrograde, and we just had the conjunction of the Sun and Mercury. So now it's actually still moving retrograde. So it's moved past the Sun. Right now it's moving backwards away from the Sun, and the Sun is moving forward. But that Mercury then makes a trine to Uranus. And Mercury and Uranus have a special relationship because Uranus is a higher octave of Mercury. And so it's similar in that it works on a mental level, but it works on a higher vibrational mental level. And so Uranus comes in, and you have perhaps this nice, neat, organized picture in your head, and Uranus comes in and says, oh yeah, right? So it opens you up to new possibilities. It's about thinking outside of the box. And I just have to share this with you. My mom, I'm here in Delaware, and my mother, with my birth mother, and my birth mother loves dolls. And I showed this to my husband because I'm a little afraid of dolls. So my husband's like, how are the dolls? And I was like, they're everywhere, because she decorates with them. I mean, they're beautiful. They're lovely dolls, let me tell you. But I said, this is the one that probably freaks me out the most. And it's this one here. And my husband said, that's thinking outside of the box. That's what Michael said about this doll. Now, she's a beautiful doll, but she's only a head on a box. Reminds me of this B-rated movie I saw about this mad scientist who loved this woman, and she was in a car accident, became decapitated, and he just had her head like on a plate, and with all these tubes coming out of it. She was a beautiful woman, and he was like this mad scientist, and she ends up making friends with the monster and that he had like in a closet somewhere. It just reminds me of that movie. If anybody knows what that movie is, I don't remember, but I was very young and very impressionable at the time. So this kind of reminded me of that scary movie. But this is Mercury trine Uranus, thinking out. Do you think you have it all figured out, right? And then there we go. Thinking outside of the box. Okay. I thought you would enjoy that. So we have brilliant ideas, changing minds change. So this is a time when things can change very quickly, even in the way you think. Plus, Uranus always brings this energy of freedom, breaking from the known and moving into the unknown. And really, what we did here with the house is we broke from the known, and we sort of were in that unknown place, because everybody's like, well, what's going to happen? Are the Democrats going to get to do it? Then what if they don't agree? And then what happens? And what happens? And of course, what's his name's like, he probably kind of knew that this was going to be like a hard climb. That's why he did it, because he knew what he was dealing with. Not that it's going to get any easier for him, of course. That's another story for another day. I won't talk about that today. This is astrology, but we can use what we see in the world. And that was a feather from the head on the box. We see in the world how it expresses itself, right? Okay. So on Monday, the 9th, we have Venus make a trine to Mars. This is a beautiful energy for making social connections. But remember, Mars is retrograde. So there can be it's going to go past and then come back. So we have to be careful with that. But it's really good energy for love and sex. And with Mercury trine Uranus the day before, you might be a little bit more experimental in general. I mean, I'm not talking about sex really, but that's a possibility. I'm just talking about being open to something or some people or some situation where you might not have been open to before. On Thursday, the 12th, we have Mars stationed direct at 9 degrees of Gemini. So Mars is finally done with its retrograde period. It's been pretty much around this degree of Gemini, 9, 10 degrees of Gemini for a while now, because as it stations, it sort of sits, it's almost like it's sitting still in the sky, stationary, and then it starts to move forward. So there's been a lot of buildup. And Mercury, Mars in Gemini is disposited by Mercury. Now Mars, and did I say, yeah, Mars in Gemini retrograde, disposited by Mercury in Capricorn retrograde. What were the chances that government wasn't going to work the way that government normally works, and that it was going to be delays and delays and delays, and that's what we saw. Well, now things are going to start to move forward with that Mars retrograde. I mean, with the Mars stationing direct, but we do have to know that we're dealing with Mars, and when you're dealing with Mars, there's always a little bit of a danger, because Mars can be aggressive. It can be activating. We can find ourselves angrier than usual, more frustrated, road rage, stuff like that. Just be extra careful out there, because people are tense. People are tense. All right. What next? Friday, 13th. We have the Sun make a waning sextile to Neptune. This is spirit illuminating the possible future. Saturday, the 14th, we have Venus making a last quarter square to Uranus. So we have Uranus very active this week. We have Venus active. We have Mars active. We have Mercury active. Venus, Mars, Mercury, all personal planets. So even our personal lives are getting all sort of mixed up and chugged up with this, where we have change and we're not really sure, and there's this it's an insecurity, but it's more of a sense of just maybe waiting for the other shoe to drop to a certain extent. The Venus last quarter square Uranus can bring sudden change in relationships. We'll talk about it, we'll look at it. So let's look at some of the charts here. Here we have on the 8th, so this is Sunday, we have, what do we have? Mars making the waning trine to Mercury, making the waning trine to Uranus. And where we have Mercury, here's Mercury still retrograde at 1501, that's 16 degrees of Capricorn, and it's trine 1501 of Taurus. The Taurus, Uranus and Taurus is still conjunct the North Node, so we're still sort of going in a new direction. This is a chart for the US, and we can see this North Node Uranus up here in the 10th house. This is the house of government, and we have Mars here still retrograde because it's pretty much standing still, but creating all this hubbub. And the 11th house is the Congress, so there's going to be a lot of trash talk, I think, a lot of discussions about what that all meant. I think there's a wait and see quality that we need to have here, because we can't necessarily judge the future by the past right now. We have to wait to see what is going to be revealed to us, and then what do we work with. Whenever Uranus is in the mix and Uranus is conjunct the North Node, there's no way to plan for it. You just have to wait to see what happens. A lot of times Trump says, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And people get like nervous about it. They get all crazy about that. It's like he doesn't have a plan, because he responds to that Uranian energy of, well, let's throw a bomb in this and see what happens. And it's almost like an experiment, but it's an experiment that hurts a lot of people. And, he's somewhat of a psychopath, so he doesn't care, but we do. The people care. But this is all to wake us up to new possibilities. And the thing about Uranus is ultimately it's here to bring equality, but in the beginning sometimes it just feels like chaos. All right, what else do I want to say about this here? Is there anything else I want to point out here? We do have, I don't know if you can see this, we have a giant fixed Grand Cross. Fixed Grand Cross is very emotional. So emotions are high. There's a lot of tension. Very often, these fixed Grand Crosses, things don't change until something breaks. So there's usually some sort of shattering of something. We do have some connections, however, to this square, which helps us to find a key out of it. And we have Chiron here in Aries. The wounds of identity. This can be narcissism. There's a lot of ways that Chiron in Aries can express itself, but in its way, it is a way out of this conundrum. Maybe a willingness to break out of an emotional trap that you find yourself in, the bravery and the courage that it takes to break out, and perhaps maybe even break out of some highly precious beliefs that we might have. Okay. So that's something to look for. On the 11th of January, which is Wednesday, we have Venus make what is this? Venus square the nodes. Venus make a square to the nodes. Now, I didn't put this initially in the list of things, but this is pretty important, mainly because I have a Venus square the nodes in my chart. Whenever you have a planet square the nodes, it's halfway between the past, which is symbolized by the South Node, and the future. Of course, the South Node is in Scorpio now. The North Node is in Taurus, and we have Venus in Aquarius. Venus in Aquarius is a Venus that cares about humanity, cares about justice, cares about equanimity, cares about all those things. And whenever you have a planet square the nodes, it's sort of like stuck between the future and the past. How do you resolve that, right? How do you get through that? How do you stop being stuck? Venus also deals with what's important to us and what's our values. And of course, Venus in Aquarius is a perfect symbol for democracy, but it's also a perfect symbol for breaking out of the old sort of restrictions, the old barriers, the old walls coming down. It's very interesting that Trump was like so into building walls, and yet his energy is Uranian, and Uranus is about breaking walls down. So we have a lot. We don't have to talk about him much, but we do need to understand what we have to learn from this situation that has been created, because we would not have all this chaos, I think, if we didn't need all this chaos. And I think if we can learn faster, maybe we can get there faster, right? Okay. Equanimity, I mean, not chaos. The resolution node for this Venus is the South Node. And so you need to go back to the past to see how relationships And the way you enmeshments, because Scorpio is an energy of enmeshment, in that 12th house can be a lack of boundaries. Like, where do we have a lack of boundaries? The 12th house can be personal undoing. So how do we undo ourselves? Venus square the nodes always has this energy of not giving yourself enough credit or not really understanding your own value. And so we need to go back to the past to see how our maybe codependent ways have dissuaded us. With the North Node in Taurus in that 6th house, it says you need to be responsible for yourself. You need to be of service to others. And you need it to be practical and pragmatic, not just like thoughts in your head, which sometimes Venus and Aquarius can be, but actually boots on the ground, so to speak, basic changes so that we can survive, and then ultimately thrive. Venus at 11 degrees of Aquarius says, during a silent hour, a man receives a new inspiration, which may change his life. That's pretty interesting. The need to rely upon inner inspiration and guidance at the start of new developments. And we are certainly in a new, we certainly are in a new place, are we not? The key words here is the overshadowing of the individual consciousness by by an inner yet transcendent power. Inner yet transcendent power. That is the power of unity. That is the power of God, Goddess, all that is. Right? We are all one. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all one. The other significant thing about this Venus square the nose is on that day, when you add the numbers up, the date that is, we get a 19-1 vibration, which is the Sun card. The Sun is about revelation and regeneration. And it's about going on a new path. It's about dying to the old and being reborn to something new. It's also a karmic destiny number. And so whenever you see that as a temporary vibration, or even a vibration in your own chart, means that you're moving in a whole new direction. Means you're moving in a whole new direction, and you agreed to do it. So can't blame anybody. Not that you would. Nobody here would, right? I know who my audience is. Okay. On the 12th, we have Mars station direct, right? We talked about this. That vibration for that day happens to be the 20/2, which is a vibration associated with the planet Pluto. And in the tarot cards, it is the Judgment card with, Gabriel tooting his horn and everybody coming out of the coffins. It's about realizing that you're more than just your body. It is the vibration of the awakened soul. So we have all of this energy of awakening. Now, the Sabian symbol for 9 of Gemini is a quiver filled with arrows, right? So it's the thing that you would hold your arrows in. It says a man's aggressive relationship to natural life as a basis for survival and conquest. And the key word here is conquest. Conquest doesn't necessarily mean, killing other people. Conquest can mean conquest of your own fears, your own ability to move forward. Really, that's what Mars is about, right? Moving forward. And so when we talk of conquest of your fears, moving in the direction that you want to move in, it's in a way a personal journey. Remember, Chiron in Aries asks us, who are you? Are you okay with being who you are? What are you? Where is your authentic self? Where does your authentic self lie? Uranus helps us with that as well, because sometimes we don't get another choice but to be our authentic selves when Uranus is in the picture. One of the things I want to point out about when Mars goes direct is that Mars is at the head of a yod. You see this? We have the South Node here, and we have Mercury, right? Mercury disposits this Mars. Mercury's still retrograde. So I have Mercury and the South Node in a sextile. So there's communication between the past and where we are at this moment. The South Node is often looked at as the place we want to get away from. But the South Node holds abilities that we have and capacity that we have and things that we know. we just can't stay there. We have to move forward. You can take those talents and abilities and move forward with them, but you can't hold them. You can't stay in the same place. We have to be willing to take everything we've learned and move forward. And of course, the other thing that Scorpio represents is shared resources. Shared resources. So we need to move together, sharing the resources that we have so we can move together. So it's not about exclusive this and exclusive that. We have to come together. And that's part of, I think, what this says to me. And it kind of makes sense. Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, is retrograde at 11 of Capricorn. So this disposits. So we have this quiver of arrows, right? And then this is the other symbol associated with it. It says a large group of pheasants on a private estate. You're going to shoot pheasants, I guess. Wasn't that what they were going for when Cheney shot his friend in the face? Weren't they pheasant hunting or something? I mean, it was an accident and all, but still, poor guys. That was terrible. I'm sure he felt terrible. The keynote, the refinement and propagation of aristocratic values by means of which man participates in the evolution of life towards even more perfect forms of existence. Aristocracy is supposed to mean like a higher vibrational state, but as we know, most aristocracy, well, not all of it, because they do have a certain sense of responsibility for things like culture and moving the culture forward. But a lot of them just care about, their resources and to keep them and to have their titles and this, that, and the other thing. Of course, we can see that in England with what's going on with King Charles and Camilla and the Queen dying, and then Meghan and Harry and them causing a big kerfuffle. This is challenging the old systems. It's Pluto in Capricorn, and we're at the very end of it. So there are still some systems that need to continue to be shook up so we can move into a new future. So those things aren't going to go away either. Let's see what else I have here. On January 14th, this is Saturday, we have Venus square Uranus. This is a last quarter crisis in consciousness square. And we also on that day have a square between the sun and the moon, which is also a crisis in consciousness square, and is sesquiquadrate. The sun is sesquiquadrate Mars, the moon is sesquiquadrate Mars. This is the hammer of Thor. Boom, boom, boom. So the hammer's going to swing, and Mars is holding the handle. So we have to be very careful about the actions that we take, Mars, and the words that we speak, Gemini. Very careful. This day vibrates to a 22-4 master number, the Fool card, a whole new beginning, a whole new beginning. So we have all of these like new beginning energies, but based on, kind of everything we've kind of learned up to this point. So it's not just about throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. It's about utilizing what we understand through our experiences. And quite frankly, many of our experiences have been so traumatic that we haven't really had time to tease that out. That's going to take some time. It's like everybody's running around with PTSD. And we're going to have to take control of ourselves, not of each other, ourselves. And that's going to take a lot of healing and a lot of understanding and a lot of forgiveness and a lot of compassion and a lot of listening. We have to start sitting down and listening to each other, right? Get out of our corners and get to the middle of the mat and let's start talking it over. And maybe some people will wrestle, but only if you like it. Okay, so we have Venus last quarter square to Uranus. It's a crisis in thought or belief. Venus square Uranus tests the stability of love relationships through sudden changes or impulsive need for excitement. Also, the need for change. Also, just change in general. The interesting thing about the Fool card, it is a Uranus card. It is associated with Uranus. So this really is quite a time when we are renegotiating relationships, and if they don't and if they're not going to fit in, like if you guys can't agree on a direction together, then it might be time to free each other. And that could be a romantic relationship, it could be a business relationship, it could be a familial relationship. There are going to be relationship breakups. And it's going to feel like we're like stepping off the cliff and traveling through space, and we don't know where we're going to end up. And just as we felt here in the United States with the House sort of not being able to do what they traditionally did all the time, you hand the gavel and it's done. There's going to be more and more of that, especially as Pluto moves into Aquarius. So we're going to have to learn to be uncomfortable with insecurity, right? Uranus and Taurus security, Uranus insecurity. And in that energy of insecurity, to learn to focus our energy in such a way that we start to form another way, or a way forward. I'm always all right, so we're done with this. I'm just gonna come up so you can see my whole self. Okay. There's this meditation that came to me many years ago about stepping off the cliff, kind of like the idea of the fool, right? Is that you have to take the step even though you can't see where you're going, and you sort of take a step, and then when you take the step you realize that your foot has landed on something, and that there's and I saw this vision in my head, that there's a crystal, almost like a see-through crystal bridge, to bridge the gap, to bridge the chasm, but you have to be willing to have the faith to take that first step, and then that second step, and then that third step. And each step you need to step and make sure you're nice and stable on that step before you lift your foot up for the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. So, if you don't have fragile bones or something, you might want to, like, walk on a curb, or do the when you're a little kid and you're on the curb and you're doing this because you think you're on the balance beam because you live in the city, and who has a balance beam? But there are plenty of like curbs, and you're walking and trying to do this. So you might have to keep your hands out a little bit to keep your balance. But it's one step in front of the other. Okay. And so that's what it feels like that's coming this week. I hope you find this helpful. So I'm going to say goodbye because I have stuff to do with my mom. It's a Christmas tree. She's like a holiday fairy. She has so much holiday stuff. It's really nice. I'll if it's okay with her, I'll show her the pictures I want to share with you guys. You can check it out on my community page because she's got some pretty cool decorations. In a way, it's like I married my mother when I married Michael, because he's so good at that too. But anyway, that's the here nor there. Have yourself a wonderful week, and I will see you again next week till we can look at the third week together. Until then, have faith that everything is going to work out as it needs to be. We're going to have to learn how to be secure with a certain amount of insecurity, and find ways to manage our anxiety through that. The best way I find to manage my anxiety is to put my energy into something I love and to shine my light. So if you want to shine your light, I'll shine our light. I'll shine my light, you shine your light, and the path will become illuminated. And we may not have to make so many leaps of faith. We actually will be able to see the path ahead of us. Okay, everyone, namaste. I love you all. Take care. Safe travels. Be careful out there. Really, 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 I love you all. Bye.